Hey everybody, this is Tom again. Hope you're having a good day out there. Anyways, I'm going to make I'm in Western North Carolina, and this is going to be the next episode on how to make a chair, how I make a chair. Anyways, I'm going to show you about the steps that you need to go through to put on the frame front. And the frame front is this piece here. I'll show it to you closer in a minute. That goes on the chair like that. Anyways, the first thing about the frame front is you need the piece that you're going to make the frame front out of. And it's basically, 1.5 inches wide by a full 1 inch thick. And it's basically what I would call quarter sawn. The growth rings are going this way. The growth rings are this way in it. Anyways, once you get that piece, you're going to manipulate it and make it into a frame front. Anyways, you remember when we put the front of the chair together, you remember that we had marks on our front that showed us where the actual front was. That's the mark right there. I hope you can see that. Anyway, so you know what the front of this piece is. So you also, on this, you need to look at your piece and determine what the top is and what the front is. I've got it marked on here, front and top. Anyways, that's just for my reference so that once I make it, I put it on the chair the way I want it to go on the chair in relationship to the chair. That sounds crazy, doesn't it? So anyways, once you decide to put it in your chair, what I do is I take my chair, and there's the top of the chair, and I put it on there, I put it on the piece, and I make 2 little marks that tell me where in the chair, where on this piece of wood that I'm actually going to put that piece. Seems like I've excluded this end. This end is bad, so I've moved away from that end. But anyways, once I get those marks, picked up the wrong chair, picked up the wrong front. But anyways, I take the piece, the front, and I put it right on to, now that's not the next step. The next step is actually in this area where I know that I'm going to drill the hole. I put lines on the side so that I can center that piece between those 2 lines, because I want that hole to be right in the middle. And the way I do that is like that piece is 1.5 inches wide. The top of the chair here is 1 inch. So I set my little square at 1/4 of an inch. And I draw a line here and draw a line here. And up here also. See those 2 lines there? And that gives me a place where when I put this down on here, I know that I'm in the center of the piece of wood when I draw these circles. And I put that like that. And then I actually carefully draw a circle around each one of those, front tops of those front posts. And I end up with a piece that looks kind of like this. See that circle drawn there? And it's theoretically in the middle of the piece. And then once I do that, I go to my drill press and I drill one of the holes. I just drill one of the holes, and you drill in that hole 3/4 of an inch deep, because this tenon that we put on top of here is this tenon up here is 3/4 of an inch right there. So we got to drill our hole 3/4 of an inch deep. And I set that up on my drill press to do that job. And I have a Forstner type bit that drills a very flat bottom hole. It does not have a, I'll get it. This drill bit I use has a very flat bottom. And these drills are very flat bottom, but these Forstner bits, they're pretty much designed to use with a drill press where you have a lot of pressure. And one of the things about this drill bit, it does not have hardly any center points sticking up. Because if you did have any kind of a point sticking up on that center, it would come through the top of this piece. And you do not want that to come through the top. Anyways, I drill one of the holes, and then I go back to the bench and I put my piece in that one hole and actually determine for sure, maybe I didn't drill this one exactly in the right place. I actually determine where I should drill the second hole. And sometimes it's exactly right, and other times you think to yourself, well, I need to move that hole just a little bit. And so then I drill the second hole. And you end up with a piece that looks something like this. You got a hole in both ends. All right. Now after I got those holes drilled, I got to decide where I'm going to cut it off on the end. And I got to decide where the relief is going to be in the middle. And I just have a little ruler. And that distance from that circle over to right there is 1/4 of an inch. And this distance here is 1/4 of an inch. And you can just put your ruler on there. That's an inch hole, and then mark 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch. And then I find the center of this piece. Sometimes it's not exactly 1.5 inches. I find the center, and that's a center mark right there. And that's where I aim that cut right through that point right there. 1/4 inch from the hole and in the center this way. Center this way and 1/4 inch from the hole. And this angle that I cut this, it happens to be 6 degrees. And I actually draw that line on there. If you're going to hand cut it, you have to draw the line. I've been drawing it, but I'm cutting that on a chop saw. 6 degrees. That's 6 degrees. And you figure out that angle is the angle of your chair. Your chair's wider at the front than it is at the back. That's what angle that is. You want that line. That angle right there, you want to be the same angle as the angle of the side rung of your chair. And then, you saw that off either by hand or however you want to do it. But you need to draw this. I draw these lines here. 1/4 inch, that's a 1/4 inch right there. 1/4 inch. I draw that line around 3 sides. There's the front. And then there's the top. And this is the bottom. And then on the inside, I'll call it, I don't draw the line all the way across, but I draw it into the middle. And then I draw these 2 lines here. That's somewhere in the vicinity of 3/8 of an inch. But this piece ends up, the inside of this piece in this area ends up kind of looking like an airfoil. It ends up looking like this. So anyways, once you've got these lines drawn on here, what I do, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to see this exactly, but I put the piece in a vise, and I use a hacksaw that I only use for cutting wood. And I very carefully go around that piece. Oh, I don't have a piece to show you, so I got to do it. I'm just doing one end of this right now so I can show it to you. So anyways, I go around that piece with that hacksaw, and I cut that in, and then flat in, and then these ones here I angle them back to get down to that airfoil shape. And the depth that you cut these slots is relative to how thick of a seat you're going to put in these things. I'm planning on using 5 32nd fiber rush, and so I cut that so that 5 32nd fiber rush maybe is a little bit proud, but not sunk in and not sticking way up. And so you have to cut, you want to cut that slot the depth for your seat material. If you're doing shaker tape, it's got to be pretty darn thin. You know how thin that is. If you're doing white oak splits, it's got to be real thin. If you're doing hickory bark, it's got to be kind of thin. But anyways, you cut around both ends like that. And then once you do that, you need to get some off of the ends down to the depth of those cuts you made. And you can do that all by hand with a draw knife and spoke shave. But I, most of the time, do the first rough cut of that with a bandsaw. And the first cut I would make, that I always make on that, is I cut the front off. And I just draw a little line on there, however thick, my piece is, however deep I have cut those slots, I just draw a line on there like so. And then I cut that off with a bandsaw. And being very, very careful that you do not run the bandsaw into this end piece at all. And then once that piece is cut off, I'll turn it up onto this side, and then I would draw a line, this line, and this line. And I would cut that off on the bandsaw too, those two sides there. And then I end up with a piece that looks like so. I hope you can see that. I've got that cut off down into there. Pretty much, kind of the depth that I want it. Now you also notice that I actually, with my hacksaw, I nipped off this corner right here, because that's going to be slightly rounded when you get done. See that? Now, if you do this with a draw knife, you got to be very, very careful that you don't tear up this ends. You can't be losing control of your draw knife and tear this corner off or this corner or any of these corners off. That's not good. But anyways, once you get to this point in the game, you then you use your draw knife. I use a draw knife to smooth that whole thing up and get it rounded off. You want that thing rounded off. And it's kind of shaped like an airfoil. I didn't even get to the lines here, but that's okay. I got down right here, you can see I got down to my depth. And this whole thing, this is the front. I've got it rounded. The back's more tapered back like the airfoil. And then once you get this whole middle part draw knifed and spoke shaved, if you want to spoke shave it at all, then I work on these ends. And I basically do the ends all with a spoke shave, but I very carefully, round them over. This is rounded over. This is rounded over. The backs, the inside parts aren't rounded over as much. But I have to, you can see a little, that's dubbed off there. And that's just because of the way that, if you don't do that when your seat material is in there, there'll be a little point sticking up there if you don't get that down like that. And then once I get all those four corners smoothed up, I do all these corners on the end. And I've done all those with a spoke shave. And if you've got a really good spoke shave, you can do this end in this corner here. I did this corner with a spoke shave. And then this end here, you can do this you can do it with a spoke shave or a knife. If you want to leave a carved whittled surface on this end, you can do that. But this is white oak, and I cut this with a chop saw, and it was already so smooth that is all I did with that is I sanded that with 220 sandpaper. But you just have to sweeten these ends up to your own satisfaction. And after you do some, you'll learn tricks like this part right here. Once you put your seat in, you might, if you haven't done this, you'll go, oh, there's a little place sticking up. I need to correct that. So anyways, then that's a finished frame front right there, as far as I'm concerned. And so once you have that done and ready to go in your chair, I've got it written in there, number 5. And so this is number 5. And I've got, I know where the front of number 5 is. It's that way right there. I'm setting it down like that. So I used to epoxy these in, but I don't do that anymore. I just glue them in with regular glue. And I'm just going to go ahead and glue this one in. Now this, I put more glue in this than I put in a rung because it's a bigger surface area. But I'm trying to cover this hole, the sides of this hole, I'm trying to completely cover with glue. And if a little bit of glue goes down in the bottom, it's okay. But you don't want a lot of glue, a lot of excess glue in the bottom. Because if you have a lot of excess glue in here, when you put that in there, if it's a real tight fit or anything, it can act just like a piston in a motor, and it can, or in a hydraulic system, and it can actually bust something. So I've got glue in those ends. Wipe my nail off, put it away. And then now I'm making sure that I have the front of this lined up with the front of this. And I'm just going to go ahead and put that in there. And that's just it's not an interference fit. It's just a regular, whatever, loose fit. But once I get it in there, I go ahead and clamp it in. And so that's installed. My front's there. There's the front. And I'm hoping that my tenon has completely disappeared up into there. And I'm just going to set that aside, until that glue dries. And that's the frame front. And that is how I do a frame front. Now there are other ways to do the frame front, and I'm not exactly sure where they're at in the literature, but I think they're out there somewhere. I had a magazine that I was supposed to show you about a spoke shave, but I forgot to get it out ahead of time, and I don't want to just look for it right now. Anyways, that's the frame front. And I guess I want to give a shout out to Drew Langsner, Dan Maynor, Brian Boggs, Tim Hintz, some chairmaker guys that I learned a lot of stuff from. They showed me stuff, and I adapted the stuff they showed me to how I like to do it. And I have been a reasonably successful chairmaker now for almost 30 years. I don't make many chairs anymore. I mostly make shaving horses for my income. But I'm trying to put this out there for you guys if anybody wants to try to make one of these chairs. It's a good project, not easy, and can be scary at times. But anyways, thanks for watching. Hope you're having a good day. I'm thankful for what I have here, and I hope you can be thankful for what you have where you're at. While I'm thinking about it, I want to give a shout out to the guy named Buckin' Billy Ray Smith. He's on YouTube. He's a woodcutter, tree guy. But right now he's gotten really heavy into putting heads on axes. And anyways, I've done that, you know, put heads on my own axes and sledgehammers and such as that over the years, and I admire what he's doing. And you guys, if you're into draw knife work and this type of thing, you're probably going to have to put a head in an axe or a sledgehammer or something yourself. And so you might give old Buck and Billy Ray Smith a look on YouTube. Anyways, thanks for watching. I think this is episode 11 on the chair making. See you sometime.